Welcome back, everyone, to week 4 of our NGO Management Masterclass Explainer. Over the past few weeks, we've been exploring some of the broader, kind of abstract theories behind non-governmental organizations. But today we're shifting gears. We are transitioning right out of that abstract theory and diving headfirst into the structural blueprint of strategic planning. We're going to look at the very DNA of an organization, how it defines its purpose, how it makes those tough decisions, and most importantly, how it translates lofty ideals into actual measurable action on the ground. So, here's our game plan for today. We're covering mission and vision, ethics and core commitments, and smart strategic goals. Then, we'll get into mapping the results chain, implementation and alignment, and finally, a bit of a reality check on why strategic plans fail. All right, let's jump into part 1, the foundation, mission, and vision. This is the absolute bedrock. Without these, an NGO is really just a pile of resources with absolutely no compass. Now, what's really interesting about defining a mission is that it is not just some catchy tagline you slap on a brochure. The scholar Harrington Bryce actually suggests it acts as a literal social contract. It spells out exactly what your organization stands for and what it currently does to create public value. Basically, it answers the big question: ultimately, what are we here to do and why? If an NGO is ever facing an identity crisis, the very first thing you check is whether they've strayed from this core mission.
But, it's absolutely vital to draw a sharp contrast here between mission and vision. People mix these up all the time. Your mission is your present action and purpose. It's what you are doing right now, today. Your vision, on the other hand, is aspirational. It's that ideal future you're hoping to eventually achieve. Think of your vision as a mental image of what the world would look like if your mission was 100% accomplished. Simply put, your mission is the journey, and your vision is the destination.
Moving right along to section 2, anchoring values, ethics, and core commitments. A mission tells you what to do, sure, but your ethics and core commitments guide exactly how you do it every single day. And this brilliantly illustrates why ethics matter so deeply in our line of work. As this quote from Givons points out, questions of trust and integrity go to the essence of the reason for the existence of nonprofits. Think about it. Trust is literally the ultimate currency in the nonprofit sector. Because NGOs don't have a traditional financial bottom line to prove their worth, their legitimacy rests almost entirely on a deontological perspective, meaning they have to have an absolute commitment to doing the right thing, governed by universal ethical principles, not just chasing a specific outcome at any cost. To put that into perspective, let's look at Goodwill Industries. They operate with incredibly clear core values. They lay out explicit commitments: respect for those served, service to the individual, and the assumption of responsibility, which they famously frame as a hand up, not a hand out. Now, these aren't just nice-sounding words for a website. They form a rigid framework that dictates exactly how they treat their stakeholders and conduct their daily business. It completely sets the cultural tone for every single employee and volunteer.
Okay, part 3, the blueprint, setting smart strategic goals. So once your identity, your mission, and your ethics are firmly locked in, how do you actually plan for success? How do you turn those ideals into reality?
Well, you need SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Let's imagine a literacy NGO for a second. Instead of having a super vague goal like, we want to improve reading, a SMART goal is built entirely on data. Say they run a needs assessment using state education reports and find specific reading gaps in underserved schools. Their SMART goal would be, increase reading proficiency scores by 15% among third graders in District X within the next 12 months. See the difference? It gives the whole organization a precise, verifiable target to hit. Which brings us to section 4, visualizing the mechanics, mapping the results chain. To connect those SMART goals to boots-on-the-ground operations, we rely on a classic framework called the results chain. The results chain is basically a map of the step-by-step mechanics of social change. It's like a logical progression. You start with inputs. That's your funding, your staff, your raw resources. Then you use those inputs to conduct activities, like running training sessions or delivering food. Those activities then generate outputs. And finally, if your strategy is actually working, those outputs will lead to broader outcomes. Now, I really want to pause here, because this is a massive trap that so many NGOs fall right into. Please do not confuse outputs with outcomes. Outputs are highly controllable. They are the direct, immediate products of your work, like the sheer number of meals served or textbooks handed out. But an outcome, that is the actual measurable effect on the target population. Let's be real, handing out 10,000 meals is just an output. The actual reduction of starvation rates in that community, that is the outcome.
You can't just measure success by what you put out. You have to measure it by the real change you create.
All right, into section 5 we go, the execution, implementation, and organizational alignment. Because as any seasoned manager knows, the best strategic plan in the world is completely useless without proper execution.
If we look at scholar John Bryson's steps for strategic planning, we see that developing an effective implementation process means turning those big, broad strategies into highly detailed work programs. It's about crafting an operational plan that identifies specific tasks, sets strict timelines, assigns precise responsibilities, and allocates the resources to make it happen. You are essentially moving from the abstract what to the very tangible who, when, and exactly how.
And pulling that off requires total organizational alignment. You literally have to align your human resources directly with your mission. It's not just about filling empty desks, it's about making sure your staff and volunteers truly fit the strategic direction. Interestingly, modern NGOs are leaning heavily into artificial intelligence for this now. AI is being used to process massive amounts of community data to refine needs assessments, automatically track key performance indicators, and even help draft the logic models for that results chain we just talked about.
Finally, section 6, the reality check. Why strategic plans fail? We've talked all about how to do it right, so why do so many NGO strategic plans just completely fall apart in the real world? Honestly, this might sound like a joke, but it is a very serious question. Does your board of directors even remember your mission statement? Research shows a shocking disconnect in boardroom sessions. Board members frequently struggle to even recall the wording of their own mission, and worse, they often have entirely different interpretations of what the organization is actually supposed to be doing. If the leadership itself isn't aligned on the basic social contract of the NGO, the strategic plan is pretty much doomed from day one. On top of that, many NGOs suffer from severe mission drift. You see this a lot in literature on Global South civil society organizations. Strategic plans get drawn up, only to be tossed out the window the second the NGO pivots to chase whatever donor funding happens to be available at the moment. The priorities become overly donor-driven, and strategic imperatives are just abandoned. Or in other cases, the NGO becomes so incredibly obsessed with measuring inputs and outputs for reports that they turn into nothing more than a highly managed corporate log frame. So I want to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with a rather provocative thought inspired by the scholar Issa Shivji. He notes that today, an NGO's success is increasingly being measured by corporate efficiency metrics. But think about it. If an NGO only measures success by how perfectly it ticks boxes in a logical framework analysis, has it completely lost the soul it started with? Are we sacrificing true, messy, on-the-ground social change just to become perfectly managed corporate entities? Definitely something to chew on as you reflect on the strategic plans of the organizations you work with. Thank you so much for joining me for week 4 of this Masterclass Explainer, and I really look forward to exploring these challenges further with all of you.